Despite our transfer activity so far in this window, one of our biggest problems remains on the left wing. Aside from the long-standing Savinho rumours, there's still no concrete interest in any other player that would fit the bill, but rumours are starting to emerge that Roberto de Zerbi is a big fan of Marcus Rashford and could be plotting a move for the England superstar. And I have to be honest, I don't think I've ever been as conflicted about a possible transfer in my entire life. It is the definitive head versus heart argument. Marcus Rashford is possibly the most complex footballer in England, and there's so many factors I had to consider when deciding whether or not he's right for our club. I want to run all those factors by you guys and get your opinions, and at the end of the video I'll give my opinion and let you know what I think we should do. This is a footballer who I believe is loved and hated in equal measure like no other player I can remember. So I'm really interested to see if you guys reach the same conclusion as I do. Let's get started. The way I'm going to present this argument is that I'm going to give you a reason that we should sign him and then a reason that we shouldn't sign him and then continue in that manner. And there's an additional 2 factors I've identified which I can't decide are negative or positive. So I'll get to those 2 points just before I give my conclusion at the end of the video. And so let's start with a reason why we should sign him, and that's market value versus quality. Like I mentioned in the intro, we've long been linked with Savinho, who reportedly would cost around 60 million quid. And the other left-sided attackers we've all been very loosely linked with would all cost similar money. Cody Gakpo will be available for between 60 and 65 million. Omar Marmoush available for 70 to 75 million. And just for some context, 19-year-old Yan Diomande, who's apparently a target of Liverpool and PSG, is available for 100 million. Now in the case of Diomande, I've just seen this guy play 4 games at the World Cup, and if he's worth 100 million, I don't know anything about football. That 100 million quid is basically for pure potential, and that just seems absolutely crazy to me. Back in 2007, we paid 5 million quid for Gareth Bale, which is around 9 million quid in today's money. We essentially paid for potential. Now, is Yan Diomande going to end up as a better player than Gareth Bale? Absolutely no chance. And this is what makes Rashford's price such an attractive proposition. He's available for just 40 million quid, and at his absolute best, I would say he's significantly better than all of the players I've just mentioned, apart from Gareth Bale, obviously. And at 28 years old, if things didn't work out, there's still some sell-on value there. That's a very attractive proposition. Now, my first reason not to sign him is linked to the positive reason I've just described, and that's his wages. Rashford's current contract at Man United runs to the end of 2028, and he's reportedly on 325 grand a week. And although we seem to be redefining our wage structure, 325 grand a week is simply out the question. I'd be reluctant to pay him any more at an absolute maximum of 250 grand a week. And so the question is, would he even accept any sort of deal that we'd offer him? He can stay at Man United for the next 2 years and pick up that weekly wage until his contract expires. He'll almost certainly back himself to force his way back into the Man United team. And they can offer Champions League football next season, where he wants to be, and we can't offer any European football at all. And so with all things considered, it makes a deal for Rashford extremely difficult to complete. Another reason why I would sign him is his stats and the eye test. Now, beginning with the eye test, Rashford is a player that I really love to watch. He's quick, he's strong, he's powerful, he's a scorer of spectacular goals, he scores spectacular free kicks, he can dribble past people, he's willing to go one-on-one with defenders, he can shoot effectively with either foot, he can come inside, go on the outside. He's just a really exciting player who fits the mould of the type of player we love to see at Spurs. Stats-wise, he's not what I would call elite level, but he's certainly in the bracket just below. Here's Rashford's Premier League stats when compared with one of the greatest left wingers in Premier League history, our very own Son Heung-min, or as we affectionately know him, Sonny. Now you can see that Rashford's stats are not quite as good as Sonny's, but they're not a million miles apart. And I'm going to back my original argument. In today's market and the open market, Sonny would cost between 100 and 120 million at an absolute minimum. As a reminder, Rashford is available for 40. But my next reason not to sign him is also linked to stats and to the eye test. In my opinion, PSG's Kvaratskhelia Kvaratskhelia is the best left winger in world football, and by some distance. And the reason why I think that isn't just his ability, his strength, his pace, his eye for a goal, his creativity. It's because on top of all that, he runs, he tackles, he works, he runs, he tackles. He is a machine, an incredible all-round footballer. One of the most complete footballers I think I've ever seen. Now, in the case of Rashford, I think his work ethic has always been in question. By the time he left Man United, he was barely trying. At Barcelona last season, they're a team that's happy to leave their wingers high up the pitch, so they don't need to work that hard defensively. And at the World Cup so far, we haven't really learned anything new because we mostly have the lion's share of possession, and so Rashford doesn't need to track back that much. If we do try and sign him, the prerequisite is hard work. Not sure Rashford has that in him. My next reason for signing him is one that makes him an extremely attractive option, and that's his injury record. After a couple of long layoffs very early in his career, for the last few seasons, Rashford has basically been available for every single game. He's a very robust player, and you can just see from his physique that he takes his strengthening, his conditioning, and his fitness very seriously. I mean, look at the guy. He's an absolute Adonis. And seeing that injuries have been one of our main problems, maybe the main problem over the last couple of years, having a player of Rashford's quality fit and available for nearly every game is an extremely tempting proposition. Here's his injury record for his whole career to date. Now, you can see that after those couple of lengthy layoffs early on, he's basically been available for every game in the last few seasons. And don't forget, he's been playing European football and international football through that time as well. Some players are just injury prone. Dom Solanke, James Maddison, for example, and other players are not. Rashford is provably not injury prone. Now, the final reason why I wouldn't sign him is a big one, and it's probably the main issue that's hung over Rashford's entire career. The company he keeps, his off-the-field activities, and his general attitude. Now, we all know about the Belfast incident, where Rashford basically flew out to Ireland in the middle of the week when he was due for training the next day, partied all night, and then called in sick to Man United. And I may be a bit harsh here, and I don't like to get personal, but look at the clobber the guy's wearing. Dripping in Louis Vuitton and probably wearing a chain that costs about as much as my house. I'll be honest, I really don't like flashiness, and I think it says a lot about someone's personality. Another factor is that Rashford's agent is his brother, who, according to the press, and obviously don't believe everything you read in the papers, but has been involved in quite a few scrapes. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail on this video because I do feel a little bit uncomfortable commenting on a footballer's family member, but there's plenty of details online if you guys want to check them out and make your own decision. The final thing to note is that obviously Rashford will be moving to London if he did decide to join Spurs. And coming from London myself, I just want to tell you, it's not a good place to be for a rich young man who could be a bit impressionable and easily led astray. Ex-Man United players from the Sir Alex Ferguson era always tell stories about the gaffer would tell them to get married and settle down with a family very early in their careers because he knew that a steady home life translated to solid performances on the pitch. As far as I can find out, Rashford doesn't have that. He has a girlfriend, but he's not married, he doesn't have any kids, etc. So in the bright lights of London, that could be a problem, considering all the misdemeanours he's had in the past. And finally, I mentioned in the intro, there's two factors I identified that I can't really decide if they're a negative or a positive, so here they are. Factor number one is, what's he actually like in the dressing room? In the absence of much leadership at Spurs, Rashford walks into that dressing room as the biggest and most famous footballer in the club, and he'd be someone that the younger players would look up to and kind of generally gravitate to. Now, is that a good or bad thing? I generally don't know because I don't know the guy, I don't really know his personality, but what's your opinion? And factor number two is that Rashford is basically the ultimate high-risk, high-reward transfer. We know that Roberto de Zerbi is the master of man management. He took Mason Greenwood, probably the most controversial English footballer at the time, over to Marseille, got some brilliant performances out of him, and actually Greenwood was the top scorer when de Zerbi was in charge. So de Zerbi has proved that he can draw the best out of controversial footballers. And in the case of Rashford, that's probably a huge positive. But if Rashford is a bad egg around the place, would it be more of a negative that De Zerbi would have to spend so much time and energy on trying to get something out of a player that was basically flawed? And if he did start to act up, there would almost inevitably be a media circus around the player, around the club, and that just doesn't help anybody. Again, I'm really not sure how that would go, but let me know what you guys think. And so in conclusion, my opinion is this. Rashford no doubt has question marks over his work ethic, his hunger for the game, his attitude, and possibly his personality. And I still find it astonishing that Barcelona have chosen to pay 70 million quid for Anthony Gordon when they could have signed Rashford for less than 30 million as part of their loan deal. And reading between the lines, there must be something about Rashford's personality that just doesn't fit and doesn't blend well with others. Because I watched quite a few Barca games last season and he performed really, really well and contributed to a title-winning side. It's a very, very odd one. However, his ability is definitely not in question. At his very best, he's a top-level player. He's still relatively young. He stays largely injury-free, which is a huge attraction for me. And he's exactly the kind of player we love to see at Spurs. Quick, strong, explosive, and a provider of spectacular moments for the fans. But I just get a bad feeling about him. And for all the good work we've done this summer in the transfer window, one transfer and the transfer of Marcus Rashford could undermine the whole thing, just because he potentially brings so much baggage to the club. If it was purely about signing football ability, I'd sign him tomorrow. The problem is, you're not just paying for football ability, you're paying for the whole package. And so I'm sorry, I'm going with my head on this one. We should not sign Marcus Rashford. He's a great player, but it's just not worth the hassle. So what do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Have you come to the same conclusion? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, thanks for watching.